You're listening to The Big Picture with me, Alice Big. I teach film studies, and I've been teaching for probably around 16 years. I've started to lose track. And like most people, I took a while figuring out what I wanted to do. The careers advice I got at school was vague at best, and even though that has improved dramatically for young people, there's still a bit of a disconnect. With this podcast, I hope to demystify the world of work for young people. I'd like to create new connections, and hopefully through listening to these informal chats, you'll get a better idea about the world of work and maybe pick up some hints and tips along the way. In this episode, I meet with Max Johns. He is a set and costume designer for theatre and opera. I actually went, I grew up in the same area as Max in North Devon, so we do have some common ground. We have a bit of a natter about life in North Devon. He trained at Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, and he's got an MA in theatre design and a BA in drama and German. Max was actually the recipient of a BBC Performing Arts Fellowship Award in 2015. We talk about the latest production that he's working on, as well as how he decided to focus on set and costume design.
I'm about to start rehearsals for a show, so then I'll that's in Manchester, so I'm going up to Manchester for that. Okay,
what's the show?
It's called The Strange Undoing of Prudencia Heart, and it's a really weird, mad play that was first done about 10 years ago. It's a Scottish play about a woman that she's an academic, and she's like quite buttoned up and boring, and her area of research is the topography of hell in like Scottish folklore.
Whoa!
And old folk songs and stuff.
Oh,
and
cool.
She goes to this conference with all these academics who study like Scottish folklore.
Yeah.
And then and she doesn't get on with any of them. Like they all kind of disagree on how they kind of like view folk history. And so she leaves the conference and gets lost in the snow and has this kind of like, it's really unclear whether she's got hypothermia and is like having a dream or if it's real, but she basically she gets picked up by the devil and goes to hell for 4,000 years.
No way.
And spends 4,000 years in hell with the devil. And they kind of fall into this like long-term monogamous relationship, which she gets really bored of. And then she eventually escapes hell and goes back to Earth and isn't quite sure if it was all like a dream or real. But she kind of makes like a discovery about what the real topography of hell is while she's there.
The typography of hell.
Sorry, the topography as in like the landscape.
Yeah, I was going to say like typography. I was like, would it be
really
Arial?
Niche,
would it be
Helvetica?
Yeah. Topography.
The topography of hell.
As in the landscape of hell.
Yeah, so she's like, her thing is like looking at these, there's a lot of representations of hell in like ancient kind of folklore. Yeah. And so like for the design for it, we've been looking a lot at like medieval depictions of hell in art and like Hieronymus Bosch and kind of artists like that who did these like mad hellscapes. You know, you get these kind of really crude, kind of old paintings from medieval times. Lots of like frescoes and kind of things in
and sort of weird, like fauna, like
exactly,
creatures.
Weird depictions of the devil and depictions of like people being tortured and stuff.
Yeah, like the underworld.
Yeah, exactly.
The sort of purgatory.
Yeah.
Purgatory's hell, right?
It's kind of on the way. It's like a stepping stone.
That's a stepping stone. That's like a bit of a layer of the journey into hell.
Exactly. It's where
people get stuck there.
Yeah. And then if it's not really clear whether you're like bad enough for hell or good enough for heaven.
It's like you're there. You're in the waiting room.
Exactly.
And you might go to hell, or you might in purgatory just about be saved, and then manage to get a ticket out.
Exactly.
Seems to be sort of depicted in some things. There's an amazing. Have you ever been to Florence?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
So one of the most sort of breathtaking pieces of artwork that I saw was in Florence, and I can't remember the name of the cathedral in the centre of it, with the big dome.
The big dome. I never went inside it, but yeah.
If you ever go back, I really recommend going in there because the artwork was amazing, and it represented purgatory on the bottom bit of the sort of outer edge of the dome, and then as it goes up, you end up with the gods at the top who are sort of massive. So it's got a really good sort of sense of scale and size, and it's just quite grand.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was really amazing.
It's so weird though when you see like people depicting those, because like the idea of hell is such a like abstract concept, and it's kind of funny seeing these like pictorial versions of it.
Of
where
hell.
people have tried, and the devil
Yeah.
as well, because it's like, as soon as you kind of reduce it to like an image, it's really
obscure.
Yeah, and really like weird. And those, a lot of those pictures of devils in old paintings, they're so crude, and it is kind of like a person with horns and stuff, you know,
eating
like,
children.
Yeah, exactly.
Just doing horrible things.
Yeah, and it's sort of like weirdly kind of terrifying and kind of laughable at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's strange how little depiction there is of heaven.
Yeah, that's so true.
So you've got like hell that's documented massively, and then heaven is just sort of clouds.
Yeah, exactly. When I think of heaven, I think if there was a Philadelphia advert, I think it was in the 90s or something, with like a famous actress sitting on a cloud.
I think I remember.
And she's like talking about how light the Philadelphia is and how creepy it is.
It's so weird.
Literally how I imagine it.
Yeah, or I think of the Red Bull adverts.
Yeah, it gives you wings.
Yeah, it gives you wings, but it is just there's no detail. The devil's in the detail.
Yeah.
Ooh, the devil is in the detail.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're in the research stage for the show.
Well, kind of beyond there now. Actually, it's designed, and rehearsals begin on Monday. So I kind of the whole design process takes place before rehearsals begin. So I've been up and down to Manchester a few times already, but I did all the designing really from my studio and from home. And then once rehearsals begin, that's when they start building the set and making the costumes and sourcing props and all the stuff that goes into it.
So as a sort of set and costume designer then, or whichever sort of, I don't know, description people choose to attribute to your job. How do you actually get into the job into that sort of particular gig in the first place, the one that you're working on at the moment?
It tends to be, it's your relationship with the director. Okay. So the directors are generally freelance as well. So a theatre will programme a season of work, so it's usually about a year's worth of work, and they'll appoint directors for all of the shows that they're putting on.
Okay.
And then it's up to the directors to assemble the rest of the team. So the directors say, I'd like to work with this set and costume designer, I'd like this lighting designer, this sound designer. And so you, as a freelance designer, you kind of build relationships with directors, and then you get work with them again and again. And you hopefully sort of work with the same directors regularly. And then it means you kind of build a shorthand as well, so you sort of it becomes easier and easier to work together because you kind of understand how they work and what they like and what they don't like, and you know what the process is going to be, because it is different every time. The process that the director and designer go through is one of the first stages of any production, really. It sort of often happens even before casting and things like that. So you sort of and again, I think it's a reason that directors often work with the same designers again and again, is that process of designing the show together, which I think you do together, you know, I'd say I design the show with the director. They're working out what their production is going to be during that process. So all those decisions you make about the sort of look and the feel of the show,
the
then
aesthetic,
inform everything that comes afterwards in rehearsals and all of that. So
is it sort of like a kind of toing and froing of like mood board type ideas, concepts, different sort of backdrop setting, I don't know, like time and place, I guess? Yeah,
and that's such a big part of it. Like, I think one thing that I always think of as like my feeling of what theatre design is that it's a time-based medium. It's very much about kind of what takes place in that, 2 hours or whatever it is that the audience is sitting watching a play.
Yeah.
And that can, sometimes you do a show and, you design a set and it's kind of static and it's, a space and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But actually, more often than not, it's about the storyboard, so you're kind of thinking about the journey of like what you start with and where you end up and everything that happens in between. Yeah. So it's kind of thinking of a play really in terms of moments and like images for those moments, because it is, and I think the best shows and the best designs do go on a journey, and you kind of leave in a very different place to where you started as an audience member.
Yeah, and you're taken into that world as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And that suspension of disbelief kind of for a good production, that's achieved quite quickly. But I think all of those elements need to sort of be really joined up, don't they, to get people instantly immersed into the universe of whatever you're depicting.
Yeah, and you're often, on stage, you're often working with a lot less kind of physical materials than you'd have in film and TV, where things tend to be much more naturalistic, and you might film on location, or you have very detailed sets that are built which are very naturalistic and kind of dressed, to be completely believable as the real world.
Yeah.
Whereas in theatre, you're often sort of trying to pare something down and capture the essence of it to the point where it's a kind of abstract version of something that people recognise, but there's a feeling that they can connect to with that space.
And also what I'm amazed with theatre is the sort of multifaceted nature of a lot of the design ideas, and how the actual set has to be sort of changeable or movable to recreate different environments.
Yeah.
So the one that actually, did you see Touching the Void?
I didn't see it actually, no.
It was quite good. I enjoyed it, but I thought that was interesting because obviously it's a film, a documentary about someone who has this climbing accident, and you'd think, well, how are they going to recreate that on the theatre stage? But they did this really interesting kind of like webbed climbing frame.
Yeah, I did see. It was a friend of mine who designed it actually. I saw
really?
Images of the show. Yeah.
Very clever design.
Yeah.
Tell your friend well done.
Yeah.
Because the design of that was really clever. But again, that's the sort of thing where you're having to flip between 1 minute they're on the mountain and then the next minute you're cutting to a sort of sequence in a pub or whatever, and it's like that must be really hard.
Yeah, completely.
Joining up locations and then the switches between them and getting your props and set design working for the best, most logical use.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing, and that, in a weird way though, that's also what's exciting about it, because I think actually so often in film you are going, okay, well, the pub is going to be a real pub and the mountain's going to be a mountain, whereas on stage you can go, okay, well, what does how do we do both of those things in one space? And what I think it forces you to go a bit deeper in terms of what they signify and what they're symbolic of. So you start to go, okay, what does the mountain mean in this story? Yeah. And what is its significance in relation to the pub? Like if the pub is very much the real world and the kind of familiar, everyday kind of environment, then the mountain is this more like maybe more mythic or kind of like terrifying or kind of more psychological space where someone's fears and like dreams are playing out in a way that is so far from like. So you can be way more creative with the sort of concepts and the ideas to represent whatever it is. Yeah. And so the sort of topography of hell. Yeah. How's that? Is it a particular colour? I mean, are you going with certain colour palettes? Are you sort of so like... in Prudencia Heart we've gone with, so it's a really interesting theatre. It's in Manchester. It's called the Royal Exchange, and it's in the round, so the audience are on every side. And it's a really high space, and it's this kind of architecturally mad. It's like it was built in the 1970s, but it sits inside this big Victorian cotton exchange building. So it looks like this spaceship that's just landed in this kind of big old building. Brilliant. And then it's the theatre inside it. So we're sort of in the first half, it's all very kind of feel like we're in a folky world, and we're in like a kind of ceilidh and a pub and cool. These kind of quite like familiar environments. And we're building a sort of tiny miniature version of the village where it takes place on stage, and the actors are sort of walking around these little tiny buildings. Oh, I love it. It's snowing and stuff. And I love that. So it'll be really... I mean, I was kind of inspired by, do you remember I think it was on like This Morning, when in the 90s they used to do the weather reports with the floating island. Floating island. I love that. So it was like this kind of grassy map of the UK, but and with like Frost who sort of, and he had to leap across. He just jump to Northern Ireland. Did he ever stack it? Do you think he ever fell in? I don't know if he did, but there's a clip of I think they brought it back recently, and Alison Hammond, who's like often on This Morning, she was on it. And they had a couple of like guys dressed as kind of sexy sailors, like doing it with her. And she, as she jumps over to Northern Ireland, she just like basically uses one of them to balance herself and just like smashes him straight into the water. It's brilliant. It's on YouTube. It's worth it. I'm gonna have to watch that. Yeah. But anyway, we were kind of inspired by that because it's like there's little miniature versions of all the landmarks. So the people are like these kind of giants roaming around space. So anyway, that's kind of the first half, and then and it's all carpeted in like green carpet. And in the second half, the carpet comes up, and we've got like a big there's a revolve in the middle of the stage, so the whole thing spins, and the floor's painted with this like absolutely psychedelic kind of hellscape that is inspired by all those kind of paintings and stuff we were talking about, but like a modern version of it. So there's like loads of devils and like weird kind of
crazy stuff.
Yeah. And then we're bringing like loads of neon light into the space, and it's going to go from being quite like acoustic and folky to like super kind of synthy and
like a really bad acid trip.
Yeah, exactly. And the music, there's a lot of live music in the show, and it's all going to be kind of live instruments, and then move to like electronic kind of synthesized stuff
that kind of makes you feel on edge.
Yeah, but also kind of cool.
Yeah,
because it's like hell's kind of weirdly sort of terrifying, but like quite seductive and exciting.
Yeah, there is a sort of, I don't know, a kind of voyeuristic or a sort of appetite for the sort of things that aren't meant to be done or things that aren't good.
Exactly.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So when, like, let's track right back to the start. So when you were at school, did you have any careers advice? Did you have any idea at school what you wanted to do when you were older?
The short answer is no, not really. And yeah, I think the careers advice was not great from what I remember. Funnily enough, listening to another episode of your podcast, someone talked about kudos.
Yes.
And that was the first thing I remembered when I was thinking about it. Was that awful bit of computer software.
Lots of people remember this, where you just sort of had loads of multiple choice questions.
Yeah.
And then it chucks out about 3 different careers.
And it was like dog groomer, milkman, flight attendant or something.
I think I got like, journalist, teacher. Teacher probably did come up.
Oh, maybe kudos isn't
Maybe kudos is all right.
Than you before you.
But the reality is that it didn't give me any other more imaginative ideas. Like, no. I think there are actually loads of other jobs that I would have been equally as satisfied in as I am in teaching. And I didn't come to teaching until quite late.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even something, it was more, I guess in my late 20s, I was thinking, oh my God, I've really got to get my act together and do something. So it was a really good route at that point. But I think that's probably the problem with a lot of careers advice, is that they don't have the sort of database to cover all the minutiae and all the sort of really unusual or more individual or jobs that you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, that's a job I could do.
Exactly. And when you think, so many people we know do jobs that you've never heard of, or that aren't sort of your typical.
They're not a teacher
mechanic.
or a nurse or
exactly.
Ones that actually, if you were to ask primary school kids about jobs, they would come up with these sort of classic examples of jobs.
Completely. Yeah. Jobs that have always been around.
Firefighter, police officer, or whatever it is.
And so many people work in, I think especially nowadays, loads of my friends work in jobs that didn't exist when we were at school. So, they're tech related or whatever. But I think definitely, growing up in North Devon, we had the Queen's Theatre, which was a local theatre.
Oh, yeah.
Which didn't really, didn't offer that much. I seem to remember they had like lots of tribute bands. And
they really did.
A Steps tribute band.
Or like,
every couple of weeks
and a really bad pantomime.
Yeah, exactly. And then occasionally there'd be like something interesting touring or whatever.
Did you do work experience then?
Yeah, so then in year 11 I got to do work experience, and I was really lucky because I was kind of interested in drama at that point.
Yeah.
But like people say, unless you see a particular profession, you don't know that you can do it. And I didn't really know what all the different jobs were in theatre. I just kind of knew I had this interest in drama.
Yeah. And
so I asked if I could do work experience at the Queen's Theatre, and I think it was the first year that it was possible to do it. And they had 2 places, and one was for someone to do a really technical position, doing kind of like sound and lighting and stuff. And the other one was to do a more kind of general sort of working with the actors and stuff like that. And I got to do the more kind of general one, working with actors and things. And the week that I was there doing it, Knee High Theatre Company were touring their production of The Red Shoes.
Oh wow, I've heard of Knee High. They're really good.
I mean they're huge. They've actually really recently they've closed down. They don't exist anymore. But from this was 2001, and they were becoming quite big at that point. They're a Cornish-based company, and they made amazing work. And they were from sort of, I think they were founded in like the mid 80s or something. So they had like a good kind of 35 years of making work, and they were at the Queen's Theatre that week. So I spent my week with them, and it was brilliant. And the show was amazing, and it really inspired me. And I think I was just so lucky because it was once or twice a year really that theatre had work like that on, and the rest of the time, it was kind of like ABBA tribute band or whatever.
Oh, look, Charlie. It's not going to help with the sound, Charlie, to be like attacking the blinds. He's probably trying to get a little fly or something.
Yeah. I was very lucky in that kind of gave me an insight into
the world of the theatre.
Works, yeah.
But Park School was quite good at productions as well, wasn't it? The in-house stuff.
Yeah, Park was. I felt because I went to Pilton.
Oh right, so you went to Pilton.
Yeah, and I always felt like Park had I remember going to see a production of Oliver. They did Oliver the musical.
It was really good.
It was so good, and I was like, oh my god, this is really cool. Like really, I mean, to me it seemed like really high production value.
Yeah, I mean it was probably pretty ropey.
Probably, yeah, but at the time it seemed really exciting.
It was good though, actually, because Robert Barber, I will never forget Robert Barber, he was the drama teacher. He actually got nominated for a teaching award, National Teaching Award, and he was just really, really good at putting together productions and really pushing students to just do the best that they could and put something really cool together. So yeah, they did have quite a good reputation actually for their productions.
Oh good, it wasn't just my memory. I mean,
it was good. And Francesca was Fagin, and she did a really good, almost like a female version of Fagin.
Oh, amazing.
She was quite like witch-like, and it was like
so radical. They were doing gender-blind casting in 1997.
I know, so with the times, so on point, ahead of the times.
But yeah, I got involved in all the school productions at Pilton, and I had a really good drama teacher actually, who was great. And so that made a big difference.
Did you ever think I want to be on the stage, or did you know at that point that I want to be more behind the scenes?
I didn't really know. I mean, I acted in the productions. That was what I found really fun, and that was kind of the main way into it.
Yeah.
It wasn't, there wasn't an obvious way you could say, oh, I'd love to paint scenery or make costumes or whatever. Although I'm sure you could do that if you had the initiative to kind of ask.
Yeah.
But no, I love being in stuff. We did Grease and I played Kinnicky, and that was really fun.
Wicked.
I mean, I was terrible. I couldn't really sing, but it was.
I don't believe that.
I wore my mum's old leather jacket as well. They were like, you need to bring your costume from her. But yeah, that was I kind of didn't really know, and I think one of the things I loved about doing, being involved in those productions was the sense of community you got from it, and being part of a project and all the work you put in, and it's real delayed gratification working on a theatre production, because it's months of work and it just feels like slog, and then it's like glorious when you put it in front of people.
Yeah, it must be.
It. And I think in a weird way that's what made me keep coming back to it. It wasn't specifically acting or specifically. I tried loads of different things before.
It was the kind of whole process, and I think you've hit the nail on the head with that sense of community you get of being part of a bigger whole.
Yeah, exactly.
And then at the end of it, that sort of adrenaline rush of, oh, we pulled it off and it went well, and we've it's happened, and we've realised this vision. It's now it's done, and it's exciting, isn't it?
Completely, because you're investing that whole time through rehearsals and all of that work, and you do get this kind of payoff at the end.
So how long did it take? Did you do any sort of relevant degree at university, or how long did it take for you to get to the point where you're now an established freelance set and costume designer?
So I feel like my route was a bit long-winded and a bit sort of round the houses to get into it, which actually isn't a bad thing at all. But I did, for my degree, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, so I did German and drama.
Oh, wow.
Which there were like 2 of us doing because it was such an unusual combination.
Very niche.
Subject, so niche. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just thought,
oh my God, right.
Determined to sabotage.
It's going to sabotage this interview. Right, Charlie, enough. That's it. Oh no, it's fine. We can keep you in if you want, Charlie. For the benefit of the tape, Charlie is a cat.
Yeah.
I want it to be like I've got some
poor person
delinquent child. Yeah, oh God, that's dark.
So I did drama in German at university.
Yeah.
Did as part of that, did a year in Germany for the degree. So my third year was I went to Berlin, and
that's a cool city, isn't it?
Yeah, which was great. And I thought, you could either study or do work experience for the year. So I got work experience as an assistant director.
Oh, cool.
Which I was really terrible at, but it was kind of a good way of like getting involved in.
Why do you think you were terrible?
I just didn't really. I just didn't really know what I was doing.
Okay.
I'm not a director. It works very differently in Germany. I didn't really understand how everything worked over there. But it was a great way of kind of just getting to see how productions worked. And what I realised doing that job was that I wasn't that good at supporting the director, but I spent a lot of my time with the designers on the show.
Okay.
And I really was always sort of looking at what they were doing and finding ways of helping them. And then that kind of made me think, maybe this is actually something I'm more interested in.
Yeah.
So then I started assisting the designers on shows. And then came back and did my final year at uni and was sort of like, okay, I'm going to try this. And students were always putting on productions, so you could just say to people, look, can I be your set designer? And so that was how I sort of first dabbled in it, really. I had a friend at uni she was like a mature student. I mean, she was only about 24, but like she seemed a lot older.
So mature.
Yeah, yeah. And she was really interested in design, and she was from Hungary, and she sort of came at it from a really different perspective. She was really creative, and I worked with her a lot, and that was quite inspiring.
Yeah.
In terms of just thinking differently about what design can be.
Because it is like, I don't know, I think I often say this to students, that kind of your journey in life is often eliminating the things that you don't like.
Exactly.
And through the process of elimination, you then start settling on the things that you do like.
Yeah.
So it's kind of important to have that open mind and just to kind of keep going and keep giving things a try. And yeah, maybe if you hadn't done the assistant director's job, you would never have realised that, these are the bits that I'm maybe not so great at, and then this is the thing that's taking up my attention more. And
exactly. And you kind of, I did a bit of everything. I did lighting design, tried that. I tried stage management. Mm-hmm. I tried, acting, directing. And sort of you just kind of
start
keep going until you find something you settle into. But I remember sort of after I'd finished my degree, I moved back to Berlin with no idea what I was going to do.
Yeah.
But sort of was working on and off in theatre, trying to get bits of assisting work with designers that I'd met on that year abroad. And there were times where I wasn't really getting any work and I wasn't earning money, and it was quite hard, and I was working in bars and cafes to sort of make ends meet. And I think when I was about 24, 25, I reached this real point of being like, what am I doing? I don't know do I want to do this job properly? Am I good enough at it? Kind of having a bit of an existential crisis. And I remember a friend of mine just going, do you know what, just do something. Yeah. And then see. Yeah. And it was exactly that thing, just like eliminate things. Yeah. Because otherwise you're sort of frozen in the headlights going, oh, well, if I go down that route, it could be wrong, or if I go down that route, it might not be right. And actually, you just have to sort of follow a path.
Just start doing something.
It might not be the right one, but it won't be for nothing.
Yeah.
And actually, all the different avenues that I tried, I now look back and think they've all informed what I do now. They've all given me relevant experience. Yeah.
I totally agree, because I used to be a chef for a while.
Wow.
And even doing that, I just fell into that job. Yeah. But that actually probably helped me be a better teacher when I got to teaching, because it's all about learning to manage stuff, whether it's resources or food. Yeah. And it's all about communicating with other people. And there's just so many skills that you acquire through being in the world of work that you don't necessarily see the links with the profession that you end up doing, but actually
Exactly.
it lays the foundation, and then
Yeah.
you start to sort of, you can look back and see how your sort of journey or path has sort of evolved over time.
Definitely.
What's your best gig then? What's the biggest highlight, would you say, thus far?
I would say, I was thinking about this a bit beforehand, and I thought, it's quite hard, I don't know, but I think I did a show about 4 years ago called Buggy Baby, which was this absolutely mad play, and it was just an absolute joy to work on. We had such a great team, and it was completely nuts. It was about these two characters who had come to the UK as refugees from a kind of unnamed war, and they were sort of struggling for survival here. It sounded quite bleak, but it was really funny. It was really dark.
Okay, nice.
And it was like a horror comedy.
Excellent.
And basically they were living in this flat with this baby that they had, who was played by like a grown up who like talked and stuff. And there were like killer rabbits in it that were tormenting them, that kept appearing with giant guns, and like axes and stuff. And they like grew a huge tree in the flat and were like eating the leaves off it and hallucinating. And it was utterly bonkers. And I remember like the first time I read it being like, how are we going to stage this?
And what is it even about? Like,
it was like a kind of David Lynch kind of thing.
Yeah.
Crossed with, I don't know what. But it was just, and it was really, really hard work to make, but brilliant fun. And at the end of it, I think I'm still really close to everyone that worked on that show.
Awesome.
And we've kind of really, I think, because it was such a grueling thing to make, we rehearsed over that, like the Beast from the East winter, you know, when it was really cold.
Yeah, when it was really cold.
Yeah, in this cold rehearsal room, and there was kind of no money on the show, and it just all felt really hard work.
Really hard.
When we finally put it on, it blew up. People loved it, and everyone was talking about it, and loads of people came to see it, and it was.
I would have loved to have seen that. That sounds amazing.
It was pretty wild.
But often the things, it's so cheesy, isn't it? But the things that are hardest in life can be the most rewarding.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big, it wasn't the Royal Shakespeare Company or the National Theatre or anything. It was
hard graft, and it went with a bang. People were like, yes, this is great.
Definitely.
So what about the weirdest, scariest, strangest thing to happen at work? Have you got any kind of weird events? You've probably got thousands.
There's a lot. One thing that was quite weird was I did a production of Hamlet at the Tobacco Factory. About 5-6 years ago, and it was our first preview, so it was the first night we were putting it in front of an audience, and we're about halfway through the show, like 10 minutes from the interval, and the stage manager just walked onto the stage and was like, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're cancelling the performance at this point, and we need to ask you to leave the building as quickly as possible."
What?
We were like, what is going on? And there was this weird, as we were all leaving, there was like this really weird burning smell, and we could see smoke, and we were like, oh god. And so everyone got evacuated, and it turned out they'd been, at this point, this was before the Tobacco Factory had a refurb, and it used to honestly be the tiniest little backstage. It was like one dressing room for 20 actors.
Oh my god.
One tiny little old electric shower in the corner of the room. And the electric shower had just set itself on fire.
Oh my god, so he just literally had to get everyone out of the building.
And they just had to evacuate. But it was so surreal, because I remember us all being stood out on the street, on North Street, and there's like nowhere separate for the actors to go. So they were just like, all the audience were there, and there were just like 20 actors in like full Elizabethan
outfit
gowns with ruffs and like crowns, and
sort of having a fag break as
well.
Yeah,
literally, exactly. And so it like completely took the magic away from the kind of illusion of
but also
some of them were like half in their underwear.
Oh, but I sort of think that's just comedy gold.
Oh, I know.
That could be written into a sort of a sitcom comedy, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That's a really good one.
So that was quite. And I mean, luckily the fire didn't like do any damage, because we had like.
Did they go back in and then carry on?
No, we couldn't.
Oh, it was
the
just
fire
like,
brigade came and they were like, "No, we've got to." I think because there were like fumes and stuff. So I remember just coming home to my partner, and he was like, "Oh, what? Why are you back so early?"
Yeah, you know, like, well,
the theatre kind of caught on fire.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of Finishers, starters, finishers. So do not go into this job if ...
I would say do not go into this job if you really crave stability and routine and sort of a sense of security, because you pretty much have to do it freelance. It feels quite precarious a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not, it feels like it is. And you're sort of having to use a lot of your own initiative and drive to do stuff. No one's really saying this is what you need to do, and
you kind of need to
track.
make it happen.
You've got to be very kind of self-motivated and self-driven, which is not things I would describe myself as being necessarily, but I think you sort of have to be able to
I think you must be if you've got this far. So
definitely
go into this job if you are motivated. What else would you add?
If you enjoy, if you don't want to be sat at a desk doing the same thing every day, it's really varied. I travel a lot for my job. I'm sometimes in rehearsal rooms, I'm sometimes in my studio, I'm sometimes doing weird, bizarre research trips to places. And so do it if you're and do it. I think if you want to work collaboratively with other people, I think it is fundamentally as a job, it is about collaboration, and everything you do, it's about the people you're working with, really,
and those relationships.
And those relationships. So
this is a real ridiculous question as a side, but when do you get paid?
Oh God!
Do you have to? Because presumably you said at the beginning you start working with the director prior to the production. The production's not going to make any money until people are paying to go and see it.
Yeah.
But presumably productions get funded by the Arts Council or various grants to get off the ground.
Exactly.
So do you have to wait until the end of the production to get paid, or do you get some money coming in at the beginning stages?
Yeah, it's actually a good question, because it's part of the job that no one really talks about. You get it in stages, So traditionally it would be that you would get you get a fee for the job, and you get a third of your fee when you sign the contract at the beginning. You get another third of the fee when you hand in the design, I think, when you sort of finalise the design, and then you get another third of the fee at the end of the project.
Okay.
That's how it should work, but things always get delayed. Contracts don't get signed usually very quickly.
Yeah.
You have to invoice for your fees, and then that goes to the finance department at the theatre, and there's someone on holiday, and it always takes forever.
Yeah.
So you are often it is quite hand to mouth. And you're often a bit behind, you're often waiting for money to come through for a job that you've already finished.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, when's that going to arrive in my bank?
Yeah.
How do you, so as a freelancer, you then have responsibility to sort out your own tax returns and everything.
Yeah.
But also, how do you set your fee?
You just get offered it by the company or by the theatre who are employing you, and then I have an agent now, so it all goes through them.
Okay.
So the fee will be offered to the agent. The agent might say, no, I think he needs more than that.
Okay.
And they have to set out reasons why. And sometimes they'll manage to get a bit more than the initial fee that's offered.
They're doing the bartering.
It's sort of a bit of negotiation that goes on. But to be honest, particularly nowadays with with austerity and everything, what theatres offer tends to be the most that they can afford.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of theatres will say, actually, we have, for the sake of transparency, we offer this fee to every designer who works in this building this year.
And that's just what happens.
And that's what it is, no negotiating. And I think in a way that's kind of a fairer way of doing it, because I think otherwise it becomes a bit, who's got the bigger agent, or who's, people...
which production's got the biggest amount of money behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And, so yeah.
How did you get an agent? Is that when you feel like you've made it? You're like, what? I've got an agent. I don't have to do the nitty gritty of all the sort of emails and the seeking out jobs and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, although if you're an actor, they kind of get work in for you, but actually as a designer or a director or any of the kind of behind the scenes people, you still really, you bring in the work.
Right.
It's through your contacts usually and all of that, but then your agent is the person who deals with contracts and fees and all of the kind of administrative side of it, which is a huge kind of help. But,
and sometimes the awkward conversations that you don't want to have.
Yeah, when things can get difficult with producers and stuff, it's really useful having an agent to sort of deal with that stuff on your behalf. But the stepping stone between me doing my degree and where I am now was that I did an MA in theatre design at Bristol Theatre School.
Amazing.
Having done a few years working in Germany and kind of realising it was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think I'd been working for about 3 years, and then I started inviting agents to come and see my work. And then that's how you get one, really. You sort of email lots of them, pretend you're just emailing one, and say, I particularly love your agency.
Yeah, I think, it really appeals to me.
Yeah. And then hopefully someone will say, I'll come and see your show. And then if they like you, they sign you.
So if you could meet little Max... cute little Max, what would you say? What advice would you give?
Oh God, I think I would say, don't take it so seriously. Don't take it so seriously. Just do what you enjoy. And I think I spent a lot of time when I was younger, kind of worrying, like, what am I good at? What should I do? What's the right thing to do? What if I get it wrong? And none of that really matters. It's like we were saying before, actually, all the different routes you go down and things you try, even if they're not the right fit, it's valuable experience. Yeah,
and they lead you somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really glad I did eventually commit to doing something that I found a lot of joy in doing.
Yeah.
And so I think I would encourage myself to just find the confidence to commit to that a bit younger.
Yeah, I think I would give myself similar advice. Seek out what you enjoy, the things that nourish you and the things that make you feel sense of achievement and that collaborative element of it, I think.
Yeah, I think as well, and that thing of the perception you have of jobs that you haven't got any experience of doing is always so based around the hard skills.
Yeah.
And, once you've done a few different jobs, you notice that the vast majority of jobs are about communication.
Yeah.
They're about teamwork. They're about, all of these things.
Being
these
personable.
kind of soft skills that, lots of us have in abundance and could apply to so many different things.
Yeah.
And so actually I think I spent a really long time thinking, well, I can't be a theatre designer unless I'm really arty or unless
I do really amazing drawings.
Yeah, and I just never had that kind of art background. I had the interest in drama, but I always felt that must mean I need to be an actor or a writer or a director. And actually, so much of what I do is, I think it's still storytelling. It's just a visual form of storytelling, and I still don't really like drawing that much, but I've found ways around that in my profession because it's only a really small part of what I do, and all I need to do is find a way that I can communicate my ideas visually. And actually nowadays I use Photoshop, I use 3D design software, I use all kinds of things that aren't about putting pen to paper and being really good at drawing. So
that's brilliant. That's really good advice. Really good advice. Well, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, me too.
For being here with me, and sorry about Charlie and this interruption.
Bad cat.
But thanks, Max.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to The Big Picture. If you want to get in touch or would like any more information about the production and guests, then please have a look in the description for the podcast. A huge thanks to Ace Greenwood Campbell for production support and for letting me use his excellent musical score. And of course, many thanks to Tom Lee for his incredible artwork.
Take it all down with sunset lights and burn it all down.